Have you ever thought you knew every single detail about the person you shared your life with, only to realize, long after they're gone, that there were secrets waiting for you like unopened letters? At 73, I thought I had cried every tear a woman could cry. I thought grief had already taught me its sharpest lessons. But nothing prepared me for what I stumbled upon one Tuesday morning. My name is Dorothy Caldwell. 8 months ago, my husband Robert left this world after 54 years of marriage. He was my steady hand, my shelter, my companion through storms both big and small. When I lost him, I thought my story with him had ended. But I was wrong. Every Tuesday, I walked to Hillcrest Cemetery with my aching knees and my bundle of yellow roses. Arthritis makes each step heavy, but I never miss a Tuesday. Robert loved Tuesdays. He used to say they carried hope, unlike Mondays that carried burdens. So Tuesdays became my promise to him. I would bring yellow roses, our flowers, the same ones he nervously offered me on our first date in 1968. That October morning was crisp, the kind of morning where you can see your own breath and the leaves crunch underfoot like brittle paper. I clutched my roses tightly, whispering little thoughts to Robert as I always did, updates about the house, memories of better days, even my grumblings about these stubborn old knees of mine. It was our quiet ritual, widow to husband, love carried beyond the grave. But as I turned the familiar corner near the old oak tree, I stopped. My heart felt like it had skipped. There, on Robert's grave, was a sight I had never seen before. Flowers. Not my humble yellow roses. No. These were grand, white lilies and red roses, arranged in a way that looked straight out of a wedding or a cathedral ceremony. The kind of flowers you don't just stumble upon at the corner shop. They were fresh, too, untouched by the cool dew of the morning. I stood there, clutching my modest roses, feeling suddenly small. For 8 months, no one had ever visited Robert's grave but me. We had no children. His nephew lived far away. My niece was busy with her own life. So who had come here, and why would they spend so much to honor him? I walked closer, my hands trembling. That's when I saw it, a folded piece of cream-colored paper tucked between the stems. It wasn't hidden well, just enough that only someone kneeling would notice. My name was written on the outside in elegant handwriting. Not Mrs. Caldwell. Not widow. Just Dorothy. I froze. Whoever left this knew me. For a moment, I considered leaving it untouched, pretending it wasn't there. My knees were already protesting the walk, and my heart, well, it wasn't ready for another wound. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. With shaking fingers, I reached for the note. Dorothy, it read, there are things about Robert you need to know. Things that will change everything. Meet me at the Old Miller's Pond Pavilion Thursday at 2 p.m. if you want the truth. Come alone. A friend who cares about justice. I read it once. Twice. 3 times. My husband, the man who held me through cancer, the man who whispered to me every night for over 50 years. What things could there possibly be left to know? I sank down on the stone bench by his grave, my roses sliding to my lap. Part of me wanted to rip the note apart, scatter it to the wind, and carry on with my little Tuesday ritual. But another part of me, the part that raised its children even though there were none, the part that survived surgeries, loneliness, and now widowhood, that part burned with a fierce need to know. I was no fragile woman to be toyed with. Whoever wrote this had made a mistake. Now, before I continue, let me pause to speak directly to you, my dear listener. If you've ever had your trust tested, if you've ever felt the sting of secrets left too long in the dark, I ask you to stay with me until the end of this story. Because this isn't only about betrayal, it's about strength, loyalty, and the courage it takes to face the truth. So please take a moment to subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. I love knowing how far these stories travel, and I love praying for each of you by name. And speaking of prayer, allow me this moment to bless you. May you, wherever you are, find peace in your heart. May your body be strong against sickness, your mind steady against loneliness, and your spirit shielded from betrayal. If you are in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, may every sunrise remind you that your story still matters, that you are still loved, and that your voice carries wisdom the world needs to hear. Now back to that note. Back to the moment I realized my journey with Robert was far from over, even from the grave. When I walked back home from the cemetery that morning, the note felt like it weighed 100 pounds in my purse. My knees throbbed with each step, but that wasn't what slowed me down. My heart was heavy with a question that pressed harder than arthritis ever could. Should I read those words again, or should I pretend they didn't exist? Grief has a rhythm, you know. People think it's just crying at night or staring out the window, but it's more complicated than that. It's routines, little rituals that keep you from falling apart. For me, it was those Tuesday walks, those yellow roses, and the quiet talks I had with Robert at his grave. The note threatened all of that. It was like someone had broken into my house and touched the only part of my life that still felt sacred. At home, I sat at the kitchen table. The same table Robert and I had shared countless breakfasts, the same one where he used to read the paper while I fried eggs. I unfolded the note again, tracing the letters of my name written so carefully. Dorothy. Just Dorothy. Whoever wrote it didn't see me as a widow or a broken old woman. They knew me personally. That thought chilled me more than the October wind had. For hours, I turned the note over in my hands. My heart whispered, burn it. My mind whispered, find out. Robert's face in my memories whispered nothing at all. Silence can be crueler than words. That afternoon, I tried to busy myself with chores. I folded laundry, scrubbed the counters, even polished Robert's old shoes that I hadn't been able to give away yet. But no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the memory of those flowers. Too perfect, too expensive, too deliberate. Someone wanted me to see them. Someone wanted me to find that note. I went back to the cemetery the next morning, telling myself it was just to check if the flowers were still there. The air was crisp again, and the same oak tree spread its golden leaves across the path. I moved slower this time, every sense on alert. That's when I felt it. Eyes. Watching. I stopped halfway to Robert's grave and scanned the grounds. To the left, an angel monument stood tall, its wings catching the weak sunlight. For a second, I thought I saw movement behind it, the edge of a dark coat, a shadow stepping back. My stomach tightened. Someone was there. I forced myself forward, though my hands trembled. The flowers were still there, untouched, and beside them lay my own roses, now wilting in comparison. I placed a fresh bundle down, refusing to let whoever this was make me feel small. But I couldn't shake the weight of that stare. Whoever had left that note was still watching me. I gripped my cane tighter and whispered to myself, they think I'm old and weak, but they don't know me. That night, sleep did not come easily. I lay in my bed. The quilt Robert's mother had stitched pulled up to my chin, staring at the ceiling while the words of that note burned into my mind. Things about Robert you need to know. 8 months since his death, and suddenly I was being told there were hidden corners of his life I had never seen. I tried to tell myself I was too old for this. That piece was more important than chasing ghosts. After all, what good could come from digging up secrets? Robert was gone. No answers from him, no explanations. Only silence. But then the other voice in me, the one that had carried me through chemotherapy, through funerals, through every quiet humiliation of being treated like I was invisible in my 70s, that voice said, no. If someone wants to play games with you, you will not look away. I thought back to all the years I had spent with Robert, the anniversaries we celebrated with yellow roses, the vacations we saved for, the arguments that ended in laughter. 54 years of marriage. Surely there couldn't be anything left for me to discover. And yet, the note was real. The flowers were real. And the eyes I felt on me at the cemetery were real. I rose from bed before dawn and shuffled to the kitchen. I sat with my coffee, steam rising in the cold October air that slipped through the drafty window, and stared at the note on the table. It seemed almost alive, daring me to make a decision. Tear it up? Pretend I had never seen it? I could. But would that truly give me peace, or would I spend the rest of my days wondering? Would I be haunted not just by Robert's absence, but by the nagging thought that I had turned my back on a truth meant for me? I pressed the paper flat with my hand and whispered aloud, Robert, if there is something I need to know, I will not run from it. I have always loved mystery novels, though I never thought I'd find myself inside one. In every story, There comes a moment when the character decides whether to close the book or step into the unknown. That morning, I knew my choice. I wasn't going to be frightened into silence. Let me pause here to ask you something. Have you ever found out something about someone you thought you knew completely? A spouse, a parent, even a lifelong friend? Something so unexpected it made you question the ground beneath your feet? If you have, then you already understand the ache that settled in my chest that day. By the time the sun rose, I had made my decision. Thursday, I would go to Miller's Pond. Alone. Not because the note told me to, but because I needed to take back control of my own story. If this so-called friend who cares about justice thought I was too frail to handle the truth, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Thursday loomed like a storm cloud. The more I thought about Miller's Pond, the heavier my chest felt. That pavilion had once been a place of picnics and laughter when Robert and I were younger. Now, the thought of walking there alone, meeting a stranger with secrets about my husband, made my skin prickle. But I am not the kind of woman who bows to fear. Age may have bent my back and stiffened my knees, but it has also hardened my will. I'd survived heartbreaks before, childlessness, illness, the sting of neighbors who saw me only as the poor widow woman. I had carried those weights and still found reasons to laugh. So if someone thought I was too feeble to handle the truth, they had chosen the wrong widow to test. That Tuesday, after laying down my roses beside the expensive lilies, I lingered on the bench. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint sound of traffic from the town beyond. I kept my gaze steady on Robert's headstone, though every part of me wanted to turn back toward that angel monument where I had glimpsed movement. And sure enough, I felt it again, the sharp awareness of being watched. The kind of feeling that sends a chill down your arms no matter how many layers you're wearing. I turned slowly this time, determined to catch whoever it was. For just a breath, I saw a figure. Dark coat, standing too still, too intent. The moment they realized I'd spotted them, they vanished behind the monument. My jaw clenched. So it wasn't just the flowers. Whoever had written that note wanted to see how I'd react. They wanted to measure my fear, to see if I would break. I slid the note into my purse, tucked my cane under my arm, and whispered to myself, "Not today. You won't see me flinch." As I left the cemetery, I did not look back. Let them watch. Let them believe they had unsettled me. In truth, their games had lit something inside me, something that had lain dormant since Robert's death. A spark of fight. By the time I reached my house, I knew this wasn't just about Robert anymore. This was about me. About proving that no one, not grief, not age, not shadows hiding in cemeteries, would strip away the dignity I had fought to keep. I carefully placed the roses from that day into a vase on my table, as I always did, and then I folded the note once more. My fingers no longer shook. Instead, I felt a strange excitement pulsing through me, a determination I hadn't felt in months. If this was a game, then I was no pawn. I was a player. And I was ready. The hunt had begun. The morning after that strange encounter at the cemetery, I woke before dawn. The note still sat on my kitchen table, and I realized I couldn't just wait until Thursday with questions clawing at me. If Robert had secrets, they wouldn't be at Miller's Pond. They would be here in the house we shared for half a century. I poured myself coffee and sat with the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. My eyes wandered toward Robert's old office at the back of the house. For years, I had left it untouched. His desk, his files, the faint smell of pipe tobacco that clung to the curtains, it had all been a shrine of sorts, a place I wasn't ready to disturb. But now, something inside me shifted. If there were answers, they would be in there. I opened his desk drawers one by one. Old tax returns neatly filed. Insurance documents stacked in order. Receipts bundled together with rubber bands. Everything was as tidy as the man himself. For a while, I found nothing unusual. Just the careful life of a bookkeeper who loved order. But when I reached the bottom drawer, my hand brushed against something taped underneath. My heart skipped. I pulled it free, a small brass key, dull with age. It was taped so carefully, as though meant to be hidden yet not forgotten. I turned it over in my hand, whispering, "Robert, what did you keep from me?" The key was too small for a door, too delicate for anything heavy. I searched the office again, but there was nothing it fit. That's when I remembered the old steamer trunk in the attic. It had belonged to Robert's mother, and after her passing, we had stored it away with her keepsakes. I hadn't thought about it in years. The climb to the attic was no small feat. My knees ached with every step, but determination made me lighter. I pushed aside boxes of Christmas ornaments and winter coats until I saw the trunk, covered in dust, still locked. My hands trembled as I slid the key into the clasp. It turned smoothly. The lid creaked open, releasing a faint smell of cedar and old fabric. At first, I saw quilts, photographs of Robert's mother, lace doilies folded neatly in tissue. But buried deeper was something else, a wooden box, no bigger than a loaf of bread, heavier than I expected. The same brass key opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. My heart pounded as I pulled the first one free. There was Robert, younger, his dark hair still thick, his smile wide. Beside him stood a woman I did not recognize. Blonde, elegant, with eyes that seemed to hold something more than friendship. I flipped through more photos. The two of them at a picnic. At a restaurant. Standing close together, too close. His hand on her arm. Her head tilted toward him. As the years passed in those photos, the closeness grew undeniable. A kiss on the forehead. His arm around her waist. A smile that wasn't just for the camera. My breath caught in my throat. My Robert, my faithful, steady Robert, had lived a life I had never known. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor, photographs scattered across my lap, my breath coming in short, uneven bursts. Each picture told a story I had never been invited into. My hands shook as I picked up another, then another. This wasn't just a passing friendship. It was a thread that stretched through the years of my marriage, quietly growing in the shadows while I remained blind. At the bottom of the wooden box, tied neatly with a faded blue ribbon, were letters. Dozens of them. I hesitated before pulling the first one free. The handwriting was the same elegant script I had seen on the note at the grave. "My dearest Robert," it began. My stomach clenched. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I wiped them away with the sleeve of my sweater and forced myself to keep reading. The letter was dated March of 1978, 10 years after Robert and I were married. She wrote of longing, of stolen glances at work, of moments that left her dizzy with both joy and shame. She signed it, "Forever yours, Linda." Linda. I whispered the name into the empty attic. It felt foreign, bitter on my tongue. I reached for another letter. This one from the mid-80s. She wrote about the pain of watching Robert sit beside me at company gatherings, while her heart ached for him. She spoke of hotel rooms, secret meetings, and promises whispered in the dark. My hand trembled so violently I nearly dropped the page. A wave of sickness rolled over me. 40 years of marriage, and I had believed Robert had given himself to me alone. Yet here, in my lap, was undeniable proof that his devotion had been split between two women. Letter after letter, the story unfolded. Sometimes their words were passionate, other times desperate, as though they had tried to end the affair but could never quite let go. The most recent letter was dated just a few months before Robert's death. "My darling," it read, "I've waited 45 years for you to choose me. I cannot wait much longer." My vision swam. 45 years. Nearly the entirety of my married life. I shoved the stack of letters back into the box, my chest heaving. My love, my partner, the man who sat with me through cancer treatments and loss, who kissed me goodnight every evening, who held my hand when my knees ached too much to walk, that same man had been living a double life. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood of the trunk, willing the tears to stop. For a moment, I thought about closing the lid, locking it again, and pretending none of this had ever existed. What good would it do to know? Robert was gone. The truth could not be changed. But then I thought of the flowers, the note, the eyes watching me at the cemetery. Someone wanted me to know. Someone thought I needed this truth, no matter how much it tore at me. I took a deep breath and whispered into the quiet attic, "Robert, why?" There was no answer, only the rustle of letters in the box at my feet. I don't know how long I sat there in that attic, surrounded by photographs and letters that felt like daggers, But eventually my shaking hands found one more object in the bottom of the box. A small jeweler's case. Black velvet. My breath caught in my throat. I opened it slowly, almost afraid of what I might see. Inside, nestled against the satin lining, was a diamond ring. Not the kind of ring you buy on a whim, but a ring chosen with care. Beautiful. Expensive. I pressed my palm to my chest as if to hold myself together. My own wedding band, simple gold, had been enough for me all these years. But here was proof that Robert had once again planned a promise, not to me, but to her. A slip of paper was folded around the receipt tucked into the lid. Robert's handwriting. I recognized the slope of the letters instantly. For Linda, finally. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, but I read them again and again until the meaning lodged like a stone in my chest. He had been planning to leave me. After 54 years, he had been preparing to start a new life with another woman. A hot rush of fury surged through me, washing away the numbness. My husband, who had sworn loyalty at the altar, who had built a life with me brick by brick, had been ready to throw it all aside. If not for that heart attack, if not for death itself interrupting his plans, I might have woken one morning to an empty house, abandoned by the man I trusted most. I slammed the lid shut, the sound echoing in the attic. My tears dried into something harder, anger. Was I nothing to you? I whispered into the silence. Was 54 years just a placeholder? But even as the words left my mouth, another voice inside me whispered back, "No, Dorothy. You were not nothing. You were everything." That is why he stayed so long. Confusion wrestled with rage, but one thing became clear. If Robert thought he could bury his secrets forever, he had underestimated me. He might be gone, but I was still here. And I deserved answers. I gathered the letters, the photographs, the ring, and the receipt, placing them carefully back into the box. My hands no longer trembled. Instead, I felt a strange steadiness take hold. For days, grief had made me feel small, watched, manipulated. But now I had proof. Now I had power. I closed the trunk, carried the box down the attic stairs, and set it firmly on the kitchen table. It sat there like an unwelcome guest, daring me to confront what it contained. But this time I wasn't afraid. The woman's name was Linda Carmichael. The letters proved she was still alive, still close enough to leave flowers at Robert's grave. And if she thought she could taunt me with half-truths, she was wrong. I poured myself another cup of coffee, sat down, and stared at that box. Thursday, I decided, would not be the day I showed up trembling. Thursday would be the day I demanded the truth. That night, the box sat in front of me on the kitchen table like a silent judge. Every time I glanced at it, my chest tightened, but I couldn't bring myself to put it away. The photographs, the letters, the ring, they were all proof of a truth I had never been given the chance to choose for myself. I thought about the woman behind the handwriting. Linda Carmichael. She had carried on with my husband for decades. She had written to him with the confidence of someone who believed she held his heart. And in some ways, she had. For hours, I turned questions over in my mind. Why hadn't Robert confessed? Did he think I was too fragile to handle the truth? Did he ever intend to leave me? Or was that ring just a moment of weakness? Had our marriage been real? Or was I living half a story all these years? I pressed my hand against the kitchen table, steadying myself. I couldn't undo what Robert had done, but I could decide how to face it. I could shrink or I could stand. And in that moment, I knew what I would do. Thursday at 2 o'clock, I would go to Miller's Pond. Not because the note told me to, but because I needed to look Linda in the eye. I needed to hear her speak the truth that Robert had taken to his grave. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of years pressing on me. Then I looked straight at that box and said aloud, "They think I'm weak, but they don't know me." Now, my dear listener, let me ask you something. If you were in my place, if you had loved someone for most of your life, only to find evidence of betrayal after their death, would you want to know the truth, or would you rather live in peace with the lie? Tell me in the comments, because I truly want to hear your thoughts. And before I continue, allow me to pause for something important. Life has a way of wounding us, especially in our older years. Betrayal comes in many forms: a broken promise, a child who forgets to call, a friend who turns away when we need them most. But let me pray this over you now. May your heart be guarded against deceit. May the truth, however painful, bring you freedom and not despair. And may you find strength in your 60s, 70s, and 80s to stand tall, knowing your life still has worth, your story still has meaning, and your voice still deserves to be heard. I folded my hands, whispered, "Men," and turned off the kitchen light. I was no longer just Dorothy the widow, mourning quietly at the cemetery. I was Dorothy the seeker, Dorothy the fighter. The woman who had left those flowers thought she had unsettled me. In truth, she had awakened me. And when Thursday came, I would be ready. Thursday arrived with a sky as gray as my mood. The rain had stopped, but the air felt damp, clinging to my skin as though it knew I was about to walk into something that would change me forever. I dressed carefully, not out of vanity, but out of defiance. I chose my navy suit, the same one I had worn to Robert's funeral, and pinned the pearl brooch he had given me for our 40th anniversary to the lapel. If this Linda Carmichael wanted to speak of my husband, she would face the woman who had been his wife, not a trembling widow she could dismiss. Miller's Pond was about a mile from the cemetery, and the pavilion had fallen into neglect over the years. The white paint was peeling, and the windows were boarded in places. A lonely place, fitting for a meeting built on secrets. I parked my old Honda a short distance away and waited, hidden behind a stand of pines. My heart thudded as a sleek black Mercedes pulled into the lot at exactly 2 o'clock. The woman who stepped out carried herself with elegance. Silver hair styled into a neat bob. A camel-colored coat that looked as though it belonged in a city far grander than Millfield. I waited 5 minutes before making my move, letting her stand alone under the pavilion's leaky roof. I wanted her unsettled. When I finally walked in, cane tapping against the concrete, she turned. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. Time seemed to stretch thin between us. I saw the lines on her face, graceful but unmistakable. She was older than the photographs I had seen in the attic, yet still carried a beauty that explained my husband's wandering heart. "Dorothy," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you for coming." I didn't sit. "I'm here for answers, not pleasantries." She gave a slow nod, as if she had expected nothing less. "Then answers you'll have. You found the box." I stiffened. "You were watching." "Yes. I've been at the cemetery almost every week since Robert passed. I saw you find the note. I saw your face change. That's how I knew you discovered the letters." My stomach turned at her calm admission. Why spy on me? Why stir up pain that should have been left buried? Her hands trembled slightly as she folded them in her lap. "Because I couldn't let you spend the rest of your life believing half a story. Robert loved you, Dorothy. But he loved me too. You deserve to know both truths." The words struck like a slap. "Don't you dare dress this up as kindness. He was my husband. And he was my soul's companion," she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. "But he never left you. Don't you see? For 45 years, he stayed. Because no matter what we shared, he couldn't betray you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to crumble. Instead, I gripped my cane tighter. "Show me proof." Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a small recording device. "He left this with me." His voice, just a week before he died. She pressed play, and the pavilion filled with Robert's voice, familiar, tender, devastating. "Linda, if I don't survive this surgery, you must promise me something. Stay away from Dorothy. She can never know. She gave me 54 years of devotion, and she deserves to remember our marriage as beautiful. I can't take that from her." I staggered back, the sound of his voice piercing me like glass. Linda's eyes met mine. He chose loyalty. To the very end. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. Hearing Robert's voice, even from a cold machine, was like being dragged back through time. Every word cut me open. He had spoken of loyalty, of devotion, yet the very fact that he said those words to her instead of me made them feel like salt on a wound. I sank onto the bench opposite Linda, my legs suddenly weak. "Why now?" I asked. My voice was little more than a whisper. Why wait until after he was gone to bring all this to me? Her face softened, and for the first time I saw something other than elegance. I saw frailty. "Because I'm dying, Dorothy. Pancreatic cancer." The doctors give me 3 months at most. I couldn't carry this secret into the grave. You deserve to know the whole truth. The words hit me like a blow. For a moment, I felt a strange sympathy. She had loved my husband, yes, but she was also a woman facing the same shadows I was: aging, illness, the nearness of death. Still, sympathy couldn't erase decades of betrayal. And what good does this do me? Do you think telling me makes you noble? That confessing somehow cleanses 45 years of infidelity. Her eyes filled with tears. No, it's not about cleansing. It's about justice. Because Robert wasn't only torn between us. There was someone else. Someone who made sure his life stayed tangled. Someone who used his guilt as a weapon. I frowned. What are you talking about? She reached into her purse again and pulled out a folder, worn from use. She opened it and slid a photograph across the table. My breath caught. In the photo, Robert and Linda stood close together outside what looked like a hotel. But in the background, barely hidden behind a column, was another figure with a camera raised. My stomach turned as recognition struck. Jessica. My niece. No, I whispered, pushing the photo back. You're wrong. Jessica would never. Linda's voice sharpened. She has been blackmailing Robert for years. Payments. Dorothy. Regular transfers from his account to hers, always after one of her sudden visits. She told him it was for tuition, for medical bills, for emergencies. But it was never a coincidence. She knew about us, and she used it to bleed him dry. My chest burned. You're lying. Linda slid a bank statement in front of me. My hands shook as I read the highlighted entries. 5,000 here. 10,000 there. The pattern was undeniable. Each transfer matched a date Jessica had appeared in Millfield without warning. I pressed a hand to my temple. She called me her second mother. She cried at Robert's funeral as though her heart had broken. Because performance was part of her weapon, Linda said softly. She wanted your trust. She wanted Robert's silence. And she got both. I stared at the papers, my mind reeling. Betrayal from a lover was one thing. Betrayal from family blood was another kind of wound entirely. Linda placed a hand on the folder. I know this is too much, but Robert carried this weight until his last breath. If you want true justice, Dorothy, you can't turn away from this. I closed my eyes. My husband had been unfaithful, yes, but he had also been trapped, cornered by my own flesh and blood. The ache of betrayal deepened, but beneath it stirred something sharper: resolve. I gripped the edge of the bench until my knuckles whitened. My mind felt like a storm, torn between grief, rage, and disbelief. My Robert had loved another woman for most of our marriage. That was enough to break me. But my own niece? Using his guilt to line her pockets? That was something darker than I had words for. Linda watched me closely, her silver hair catching the dull light that filtered through the pavilion's cracked boards. Dorothy, I know this is unbearable, but you need to see the whole picture. Robert loved me, yes, but he stayed with you. He chose you, again and again, even when it tore him apart. Her words stung, but the recording I had heard still echoed in my ears. Robert's voice, begging Linda not to destroy the memory of our marriage, not to let me suffer under the weight of his weakness. It was the voice of a man who, despite his sins, could not abandon me. Do you think that makes it better? I snapped. Do you think knowing he came home to me every night, only to run to you in secret, is a comfort? That his loyalty was intact just because he never packed a suitcase? Linda's eyes glistened. No. But it means your marriage was not false. He loved you as much as he loved me. Perhaps more, because you were his anchor. He once told me that leaving you would be like tearing out his own heart. That's why he stayed. Tears blurred my vision. I remembered Robert holding my hand during chemotherapy, whispering that I was stronger than both of us. I remembered him making soup when arthritis kept me in bed. I remembered laughter in the kitchen, Sunday mornings with the newspaper, the quiet comfort of his presence. Had it all been real? Or was I clinging to scraps from a man who had divided himself between two lives? Linda slid another paper from her folder, the receipt for the ring. He bought this in a moment of weakness. He told me later he regretted it. He said he couldn't leave you, not after everything you had been through together. He tried to end things with me, more than once. but guilt and longing pulled him back. He was flawed, Dorothy. Flawed, but not faithless. Her words pierced me in a strange way. Could both betrayal and devotion exist side by side? Could love and disloyalty occupy the same heart? I leaned back against the cold bench and closed my eyes. For 54 years, I believed I was his only one. Now I find out I was one of two. That doesn't feel like loyalty, Linda. That feels like a life stolen from me. She reached across the space between us, not to touch, but to plead. But you were the one he built his life with. You were the one he grew old with. You were the one he asked for in his final days. Doesn't that tell you something about where his true devotion lay? I opened my eyes and looked at her, this woman who had been both my rival and my husband's confidant. It tells me he was weak. But it also tells me he couldn't let me go. Maybe that's love. Maybe it's selfishness. Maybe it's both. The silence stretched long between us, broken only by the faint drip of water from the pavilion roof. In that silence, my heart shifted, just slightly. I could hate Robert for his betrayal, but I couldn't erase the years of devotion he had given me. Love is rarely clean. Sometimes it is tangled, messy, and unbearably heavy. The drizzle outside thickened, pattering against the pavilion roof, as if the world itself was leaning in to hear what passed between us. Linda's face had lost its polish. No longer the poised woman stepping out of her Mercedes. She looked tired, mortal, fragile. "There's one more thing," she said softly. "Robert didn't just stay because he feared hurting you. He stayed because he admired you. He told me often that you were the strongest person he'd ever known, that you could carry weights he never could. And that's why he could never leave you. Because without you, Dorothy, he wouldn't have survived as long as he did." Her words sank into me slowly, like water seeping into dry earth. For decades, Robert had split himself between us, yet in his final breath he had chosen to protect me, not her. I wasn't sure if that made me victorious or just wounded in a different way. Linda took a shaky breath. "When I learned my diagnosis, I realized I didn't want to die with lies rotting in my chest. I wanted you to know the truth, about him, about me, about Jessica. And I wanted to give you the choice Robert denied you. You deserve to choose what to do with the truth, not to have it hidden from you." I studied her face, lined, weary, and streaked with tears. She was not the villain I had painted in my mind all these years. She was a woman who had loved deeply, foolishly, selfishly, and perhaps just as faithfully in her own way as I had. "And what do you want from me now?" I asked, my voice steady at last. Her lips curved in the faintest of smiles. "Nothing. My time is short. But before it ends, I want to see Jessica answer for what she's done. Robert carried her secret to his grave. But you, Dorothy, you can carry justice." I looked at the folder of documents she had laid before me. Photographs, bank records, forged receipts. The evidence of betrayal stacked as high as the letters I had found in Robert's trunk. My niece, the girl I had once held on my lap, the young woman who had once promised to look after me in my old age, had been draining us dry while pretending to care. Betrayal from a stranger is pain. Betrayal from family is poison. I straightened my shoulders. "Then we'll make sure Jessica answers. Together." For the first time that day, Linda's expression softened into something almost peaceful. She nodded, her eyes glistening. Together. The rain fell harder, drumming a rhythm above us. But I no longer felt weak beneath its sound. I was tired, yes, but also sharpened. Whatever came next, I would not walk into it blindly. Now, dear listener, let me turn to you. I've laid my heart bare. My husband lived 2 lives, and my niece betrayed us both. Yet still, I see traces of his devotion, in his care for me, in his final choice to protect me from truth. So let me ask you, do you believe love and loyalty can exist alongside betrayal? Can a heart be divided and still be true? Share your thoughts in the comments, because I know this question has no easy answer, and I want to hear where you stand. I rose from the bench, cane in hand, and looked Linda in the eye. Thursday may have been your day to tell me the truth. But Friday will be our day to begin taking back what Jessica stole. She smiled faintly, her strength waning but her resolve burning. And in that moment, for the first time since Robert's death, I no longer felt alone. 3 weeks after that meeting at Miller's Pond, I found myself sitting in my living room with Jessica smiling across from me. She fussed over me like always, her voice sweet as honey. "Oh, Aunt Dorothy, you poor thing," she cooed, patting my hand as though I were a child. "You've been under such stress. I'm here now, and I'll help you with everything. Everything." I almost laughed. Spread across the coffee table were Robert's old bank statements. I had highlighted the transfers that matched the dates Linda had shown me. I let my hands tremble just enough to make Jessica confident. "I just don't understand, dear. Why would Robert send so much money to your account? I keep seeing 5,000 here, 10,000 there." Her smile flickered, but only for a second. "Oh, those were for Emma's tuition. And little Jake's surgery. Don't you remember?" I tilted my head. "But Jake never had surgery. I called your mother-in-law yesterday. She said he's been perfectly healthy." The color drained from Jessica's face, but she quickly pasted on another smile. "You must have misunderstood her. You know how older people can get details mixed up." "Older people." She said it casually, like she was brushing crumbs off the table. I clenched my jaw to keep from showing the fury boiling inside me, but this was all part of the plan. In the kitchen, Linda sat quietly with a recording device and an FBI agent listening through the baby monitor we'd borrowed from my neighbor. Jessica leaned forward, lowering her voice as if confiding in me. "Aunt Dorothy, you really shouldn't worry yourself with this. Robert just wanted to help me. You know how generous he was." I looked down at the papers, highlighting one entry in particular. $20,000, Jessica. Marked as Dorothy's medical expenses. But I never had expenses like this. My insurance covered everything. Her face hardened. Uncle Robert must have been confused. You know how men are with money. I set the paper down and stood, my cane steady in my hand. My voice no longer trembled. Or maybe he wasn't confused at all. Maybe he was paying to keep you quiet about something you discovered. Jessica froze. The mask slipped. Her eyes went cold, sharp. "What are you talking about?" I stepped closer. "I'm talking about blackmail. About you stealing from us. About you draining Robert's accounts for years under the guise of family duty." Her jaw tightened. "You can't prove anything. And even if you tried, who would believe you?" A grieving widow in her 70s, shaky and forgetful, against a respected professional with 2 children. From the kitchen came a firm voice. "How about the Federal Bureau of Investigation?" Jessica spun around. Linda stepped out first, pale but composed, followed by Agent Martinez in a dark suit. The agent held up his badge. "Jessica Sullivan, you're under arrest for wire fraud, elder abuse, and extortion." Jessica's mouth fell open. The mask was gone for good. Jessica's face twisted in disbelief. "This is ridiculous. Aunt Dorothy, you can't do this to me. Tell them. Tell them you don't believe any of this nonsense." I stayed steady, my cane planted firmly on the rug. "Jessica, I believed you for years. I believed every story, every excuse, every tear you shed at Robert's funeral. But no more. I know the truth now." Agent Martinez moved closer, reciting her rights in a calm, practiced tone. But Jessica wasn't finished. She turned on Linda, her voice dripping with venom. "And you're nothing but a bitter old mistress. You ruined his life and now you're trying to ruin mine." Linda didn't flinch. "I loved him. And he loved me. But unlike you, I never used his heart as a weapon. You used him, Jessica. You used his guilt to rob him blind." Jessica's eyes darted between us, desperate now. "Don't you get it, Aunt Dorothy? He cheated on you for decades. You weren't enough for him. I just took what was fair for me." My voice came out clear, sharper than it had been in years. "You're wrong. Maybe Robert's heart wandered. Maybe he betrayed me in ways I'll carry to my grave. But when it mattered, he stayed. He chose me. That's the difference between love and loyalty, Jessica. You wouldn't understand it, because loyalty means giving even when it costs you everything." The room went still. Jessica opened her mouth, but no words came. For the first time, I saw her not as my niece, not as the child I once tucked into bed, but as a stranger who had clawed at my marriage for her own gain. Agent Martinez stepped forward, handcuffs ready. Jessica's voice broke into a panicked shriek. You think you've won? You think this makes you better than me? Your husband betrayed you for 50 years. He loved her more than he ever loved you. I felt my chest rise with steady breath. My hands didn't shake. Maybe he loved her. Maybe he loved me. Maybe he was too weak to choose between us. But weakness isn't the same as cruelty. He didn't hurt me to feed himself. You did. That's the difference. The clink of handcuffs echoed as Martinez secured her wrists. Jessica thrashed, her polished mask shattered. You'll regret this. You're nothing but a bitter old woman. I looked her in the eye. No anger left in me, only clarity. No, Jessica. I am an old woman who finally sees the truth. And that truth is stronger than your lies. Martinez guided her toward the door, her protests fading into the hallway. Linda sank into a chair, her shoulders trembling with relief. I lowered myself beside her, our hands brushing on the armrest. For the first time, we sat not as rivals, but as two women bound by the same man's flaws and by a betrayal that reached further than either of us could have imagined. The house felt strangely quiet after the agents left with Jessica. For years, her laughter had filled my kitchen. Her hands had helped with my groceries. Her voice had called me Aunt Dorothy with such warmth. Now I knew it had all been performance, a mask for greed. Linda sat across from me, pale from the strain but steady in her gaze. For the first time, I saw her not as the thief of my husband's affection, but as another woman who had carried her own kind of grief. You should hate me, she said softly, almost to herself. I took a slow sip of water before answering. I did. For a long time. But after what Jessica did, after hearing Robert's voice on that recording, I can't bring myself to hate you anymore. We were both betrayed, Linda. Just in different ways. Her eyes brimmed with tears. I didn't want to steal him from you. I only wanted the piece of him he gave freely. But now, looking at you, I see he gave you more than I ever realized. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of decades pressing down yet strangely lifting at the same time. I realized then that grief has layers, and sometimes the only way to peel them back is to share them with someone who understands the wound. Over the weeks that followed, Linda came often. We shared tea at my table, not as enemies but as companions. She told me about her youth, about how she and Robert had first met at the accounting office where they both worked. I told her about my marriage, the quiet evenings, the holidays, the fights, and the laughter. For the first time, we both held the whole story of Robert Caldwell between us, no longer fractured, no longer hidden. Her illness moved quickly. By December, she was too weak to drive. I began visiting her in her small apartment, bringing soup and reading her letters aloud when her eyesight blurred. One night, as I tucked a quilt around her shoulders, she reached for my hand. Dorothy, she whispered, her voice thin. Thank you for forgiving me enough to sit here. I don't deserve your kindness, but it has given me peace. Tears pricked my eyes. We both loved the same man, Linda. Maybe forgiveness isn't about who deserves it. Maybe it's about setting both our hearts free before it's too late. She closed her eyes, a faint smile on her lips. A week later, she slipped away in her sleep. At her funeral, there were few mourners. I stood among them, not as Robert's widow confronting his mistress, but as a woman who had found in her rival a strange kind of sisterhood. Back home, I sat with the wooden box again. The photos, the letters, the ring. They no longer burned like coals in my chest. Instead, they felt like reminders of a complicated man, a tangled love, and two women who had chosen to heal instead of hate. Months passed, and winter turned into spring. The garden Robert once tended bloomed again, but this time I cared for it myself. Each blossom reminded me of survival, that even after the harshest season, life could return. Jessica's trial made headlines in Millfield. The evidence Linda had collected, combined with the FBI sting, left little room for defense. Witness after witness confirmed the transfers, the lies, the manipulation. I sat in the courtroom as Jessica avoided my gaze, her once sweet smile replaced by the cold mask of someone who knew the game was over. When the judge sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison, I felt no triumph, only release. The money she had stolen was ordered to be repaid, and though I knew much of it was gone, the principle mattered more than the balance. Justice had been spoken aloud, not hidden in whispers. Walking out of that courtroom, I realized something had shifted in me. For months I had lived in the shadow of betrayal. But betrayal does not have to be the last chapter. It can be the beginning of strength. I began attending a local support group for seniors who had been victims of financial abuse. Many of them felt ashamed, afraid to admit how they had been tricked or manipulated. I shared my story, not every detail, but enough. Enough to show that even someone who thought herself wise could be blindsided, and enough to show that healing was possible. Soon, I was asked to speak at community meetings, libraries, even churches. Protect your accounts. Protect your hearts, I would say. Because betrayal can come not only from strangers but from the very people you trust most. In those rooms, I found a new purpose. Helping others became the balm for my own wounds. Each time a widow clasped my hand and said, "Thank you for sharing," I felt Robert's shadow lift a little more. One evening, as the sun set through my kitchen window, I poured myself a cup of tea and thought of Linda. Her absence still ached, but her presence in those last months had been a gift. We had both carried scars, and together we had chosen peace instead of bitterness. That choice had changed everything. Now, dear listener, I turn once more to you. We've walked together through graveside secrets, hidden letters, betrayal, justice, and healing. So tell me, what are your thoughts? Do you believe love and loyalty can survive alongside betrayal? Share them in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share it so others can learn how to guard their hearts and their homes. Your support keeps these stories alive. Before we part, let me pray over you. May your days be filled with peace that cannot be shaken. May you be shielded from betrayal, whether by strangers or loved ones. And may your golden years be marked not by loneliness or fear, but by strength, companionship, and the unshakable knowledge that you are worthy of love and respect. Amen. I set down my cup of tea, the garden blooming outside, and whispered into the quiet, "Robert, you were flawed, but you were mine. And now I am finally free." It has been a year since the flowers appeared on Robert's grave, a year since secrets once buried rose into the light. Some days, the memories still sting like a fresh wound. Other days, I find myself smiling at the years we shared. The good ones, the laughter, the small kindnesses that even betrayal could not erase. Robert loved 2 women. That truth will never change. But what defines him in my memory is not his weakness, not the letters or the ring he never gave. What defines him is his final choice: loyalty. He stayed. Through sickness, through old age, through the heaviness of our ordinary life together, he stayed. And when death drew near, he asked that my heart be protected from the pain of his hidden story. It was not perfect love, but it was love all the same. Every Sunday, I visit the cemetery. I stop first at Robert's grave. I bring roses, the same kind I've laid for decades, and speak to him softly, telling him about the garden, about the group meetings, about the women who find courage through my story. I still wear my wedding band, not because I ignore his faults, but because I honor the years he gave me. Then, I walk a short distance further, to Linda's grave. I place lilies there, just as she once placed them on Robert's stone. At first, it felt strange, almost disloyal. But over time, I came to see it as something else: forgiveness. She loved him too. She carried a different kind of devotion, one I once hated but now understand. At her grave, I whisper thanks for her honesty, for her companionship in her final months, for showing me that even broken love can teach us something about strength. 2 graves, 2 flowers, 2 women who both claimed pieces of one man's heart. Visiting both has become my ritual, not of sorrow, but of peace. A reminder that healing does not come from pretending betrayal never happened. Healing comes from facing it, naming it, and choosing not to let it poison the rest of your days. When I look back now, I see that truth, no matter how painful, was the key that set me free. If I had never found those letters, I might have lived the rest of my life with only half the story, clinging to an image that wasn't real. Instead, I carry the whole picture, a marriage filled with devotion, shadowed by weakness, and strengthened in the end by loyalty. That is my lesson to you, dear listener. Truth may hurt, but it sets us free. It frees us from illusions, frees us from silence, frees us from the chains of betrayal. And once free, we can choose what to do next. We can choose bitterness, or we can choose healing. I chose healing. Now I return to the question I asked at the very beginning. How do you carry the weight of betrayal when it comes from the one you trusted most? My answer, after walking this long road, is this: you carry it by refusing to let it define you. By turning pain into purpose. By remembering that love, even flawed love, can still shape you for the better. So I leave you with this. May you find peace in your truth, no matter how hard it is to face. May betrayal never take away your dignity or your hope. And may you, like me, learn that forgiveness is not weakness, but the greatest act of strength we can give ourselves.